Welcome to Twists of Life, where every story has an unexpected turn. Stories of joy and sorrow, hope and redemption, just like the life we all live. Make yourself comfortable. It's time to begin. Diana, seriously? Chloe didn't take her eyes off her friend, leaning over the table in the cozy cafe. Looks like we have a wonderful reason to raise a glass, Diana smiled slyly, bringing the goblet of amber liquid to her lips. She had called Chloe the night before, suggesting they have lunch together. Chloe, a well-known gossip and passionate lover of other people's stories, agreed without hesitation. And as it turned out, there really was a reason. Diana coquettishly tossed back her dark hair, showing off the sparkle of new earrings in her ears. "Oh, I think I can already guess what this is about," Chloe drawled knowingly. "A new suitor, and judging by appearances, not a poor one." "You are observant," Diana confirmed. The waiter placed the ordered dishes in front of the girls and smiled politely. "Well, hurry up and tell me. I'm dying of curiosity," Chloe pleaded as soon as the waiter walked away. Diana chuckled softly. This was one of her favorite pastimes, to torment her friend, doling out information in small portions. For Chloe, nicknamed the Magpie, it felt like real mockery. "He's in the restaurant business. He's rich, handsome, generous, gallant, and drives the latest model Lexus," Diana rattled off, as if shedding a burden. Chloe faked a swoon, dramatically slumping in her chair. Then she perked up and looked at her friend with admiration. "Wow, what a catch! And how long have you been, well, together?" She eagerly prepared to listen. "About a week. And we met, you won't believe it, in a flower shop." Diana sipped her drink. "I went there to choose flowers for decorating a hall for an upcoming order, and I left with a bouquet of white roses. For myself." "Simply amazing," Chloe couldn't stop gushing. "At least show me a photo of this oligarch." Diana reached into her purse for her phone. A few taps on the screen, and soon the friends were examining a photo of the man. "The suit fits like a glove," Chloe declared authoritatively. "You can tell he didn't just step out of the local barber shop. Fit. He's not a man. He's a dream." Chloe sighed enviously, propping her cheek on her hand. She hadn't had anyone for 6 months, and her last beau didn't even come close to having such a list of merits. Suddenly, her eyes sparkled with a new thought. Chloe straightened up and, tilting her head shrewdly, looked at Diana. "But we both know there's always some drawback, even a small one, right?" The girls had long ago learned an unwritten rule. No matter how perfect a man seemed at first glance, he was bound to have a flaw. It was almost a pattern. The handsome biker turned out to be a womanizer, the rich businessman a heavy drinker, the charismatic boss rude and stingy. The rule worked flawlessly. "There is a drawback," Diana confirmed with a sigh. "He's married." "Oh, pfft," Chloe waved her hand with feigned indifference. "Trifles." The friends giggled, and the light clinking of glasses filled the cafe. "Wives have never bothered us," Diana nodded in agreement. "Especially that kind of wife." "Ugh." The girl wrinkled her nose dramatically, showing complete disdain for her unknown rival. No manicure, no hairstyle, sits at home, fat. Basically, some kind of frump. "Even so," the gossipy friend exclaimed in surprise. "Let's investigate." Diana ran a finger with a bright red glossy nail across her smartphone screen, and soon a photo of a woman clearly over 40 with a simple haircut, in an ordinary business suit and blouse, appeared before both girls. "Is she a teacher or an accountant?" Chloe giggled. "Seriously, such a handsome man married to this mistake? Are you sure?" "I'm sure. And it's all for the best. Diana blew her bangs out of her eyes. Look at me and her, at her and me. Even a fool can see who a normal man would rather be with. Chloe scrutinized her friend with a critical eye. It's not even interesting to steal a husband from someone like that, Diana yawned. She also seems to be about 7 years older than him. He probably married her as a gray mouse for appearances, and she's happy to sit at home and forgive him everything. I know women like that well. Ready to wait just for him to come home to sleep, right? Chloe drawled, finishing her wine. But you plan to make sure he doesn't even come home to her to sleep in the end? How will the poor gray mouse survive that? The gossipers burst into laughter. The leather of the steering wheel felt pleasantly cool against his fingers. A faint scent of luxury permeated the cabin. And even if the car was formally registered to his wife, that was just on paper. Would any of his companions bother to check the documents in the glove compartment? All that mattered to them was that George was sitting behind the wheel of an expensive foreign car. The phone rang. George glanced at the screen. It was Nina calling. He pressed the button on the steering wheel, and his wife's voice came through the speakers. Georgie, today is Chef Helen's 50th birthday at the restaurant on Kromskaya. Please buy a bouquet and congratulate her from us, Nina said quickly and clearly. Okay, he replied curtly and hung up. George didn't love his wife, felt embarrassed by her, and tried not to appear anywhere with her, except for rare family events. He treated Nina like an old, good, but unattractive friend. Nina was older, preferred calm-colored, comfortable clothes made of natural fabrics, used minimal makeup, and never dyed her hair. However, she possessed a sharp mind and by the age of 30 had become a successful businesswoman. They met when 20-year-old George, who had just arrived from the provinces, came to apply for an administrator position at her newly opened restaurant. It was then that he realized that by attaching himself to Nina, he could make a good life for himself, which he did with brilliant success, becoming first the executive director of the chain and then the husband of its owner. Only his nature began to assert itself after a few years. George was lucky. Nature had endowed him with the best in terms of appearance: broad shoulders, a strong chin, tall stature, a dazzling smile. Next to his unremarkable wife, he began to wither without female attention and decided that he shouldn't deny himself the company of young, long-legged, appetizing beauties. His whims changed from time to time, and George didn't take anyone seriously. He carefully concealed his affairs from his wife and successfully exploited her work, money, and position. And George didn't care at all what anyone thought about it. The main thing was that Nina remained calm. 7 years passed like this. A flower shop appeared on the street ahead. Deciding not to delay the matter, Georgie turned on his signal and pulled into the nearest parking lot. He figured a simple bouquet of 30 carnations would be enough for the chef. The shop door jingled, hitting the Asian wind chimes that made melodic trills when they touched. Inside, besides the florist, there was another customer. She was meticulously examining expensive orchids and large white roses, and Georgie was studying the girl with too much interest, for a few moments even forgetting why he had come in the first place. The florist's voice snapped him out of his reverie. "Young man, can I help you?" "Ah, yes. I need a bouquet for a jubilee. 50 years old, for a woman." George quickly composed himself, not losing sight of the attractive customer. "A relative? Your mother?" the florist clarified. "No, a colleague. Nothing fancy. A formal congratulation," Georgie answered dryly and nodded towards the lilac chrysanthemums. For some reason, the florist sighed and began wrapping the flowers. A slender, petite brunette. Long hair, blue eyes. Too beautiful to miss. He would regret it later. Georgie imagined a pleasant scene for a minute, and his chest warmed nicely. "These are the best roses, the white angel variety," he said, stopping behind the girl. You only give these to loved ones." The stranger turned around and her gaze swept over Georgie's business suit and the car keys in his hand. This always worked. In the modern world, so many women crave male beauty and status that the possessor of these is granted the sweetest choice. "Do you know a lot about flowers?" the girl asked, adjusting her hair flirtatiously. "I know who they should be given to," George smiled dazzlingly. "Oh?" The girl raised an eyebrow. "And what flowers would you give me?" Georgie understood that he was facing a girl with character. His excitement grew even stronger. He smiled again and turned to the florist, who was just finishing wrapping the chrysanthemums. "Please, 21 more white roses from the ones the young lady was choosing." He readily took his wallet from the inside pocket of his jacket. Under the stranger's astonished gaze, they left together with the 30 carnations. An unexpected companion with a bouquet of white roses. "Do you give such bouquets to all girls when you meet them?" she asked with a smile. "No," the man put away his wallet. "You are the first." The girl blushed, flattered. "And I hope you won't refuse me dinner tonight?" George asked, having prepared the line. "I won't refuse." She extended her hand to him. "Diana." Georgie kissed the outstretched hand, looking into her eyes. "George, Savignon Restaurant, 8 in the evening. I might be a little late. I think that's permissible on a first date." George paused for a second, feigning thought. "Until this evening, Diana." "Until this evening, George." He walked to his car, got behind the wheel, and started the engine. All this time he watched the girl. The suit, the car, and the charm worked flawlessly. Georgie winked at himself in the rearview mirror and drove out of the parking lot. By evening, the lady would be completely softened by her own dreams and would agree to anything, although she was too beautiful to be limited to one evening. It had been a long time since he had a long-term affair. Who knows? Maybe the time had come. He himself had been thinking about where to invite her, to which restaurant, but then he reconsidered and chose the 1-2 streets away, so as not to bother too much with the trip. Diana, as she had warned, was 20 minutes late, but she arrived in a skirt with such a slit that Georgie felt hot. Dinner quickly made it clear that they were both adults without illusions. "I want to say right away," Georgie twirled a glass of whiskey in his hands, "I'm married, but I don't love her. And anyway, it was done for formality." Diana looked at him attentively, sipping her dry red wine. "You know, I'm also not ready to settle down at home and embrace domesticity yet." She ran a finger along the stem of the glass. "We both understand what we want from each other, and your wife doesn't bother me at all." George rarely heard such things. Usually, his conquests would start regretting, reproaching, sometimes even throwing tantrums with demands. He quickly sent such women packing. A toy is a toy precisely so it doesn't dictate to its owner, but accepts his rules. Dinner ended at a hotel. Both got what they wanted. Georgie didn't stay the night, went home, promising to call in a few days. Left alone, she had no regrets about what had happened. Moreover, she realized that she had stumbled upon a big fish and that showing too much character now was maximally disadvantageous. She needed to be a gentle kitten for a while, and then he would stay the night, and he would divorce his wife. "Patience, Diana, patience," she told herself, looking at the shadow from the nightlight. "Handsome, smart, not poor. It's worth putting in the effort here." Nina collapsed onto the living room sofa, exhausted. Today she had been on her feet since morning, visiting suppliers, looking for an error in accounting, interviewing a new chef, ordering cutlery. When you own a chain of restaurants, there's almost no time to rest. Things come up every day. Nina understood this when she plunged into the catering industry. However, She loved her work with all her heart. She herself had trained as a chef, then quickly completed personnel management courses, worked for almost 9 years in an elite restaurant, and knew the industry inside and out. And then, after selling her grandmother's apartment, she started her own business and met her future husband, George, that same year. The woman didn't hesitate for long, accepted the proposal, as there was no time to be picky about suitors. She had spent the years that other girls spent on dates on building her business and working. George was handsome, and Nina was flattered that he had chosen her. Soon her husband proved that he also had a good business acumen, and Nina made him the manager of her chain of establishments. Malicious tongues whispered that George was a gigolo, but the woman didn't believe it, or didn't want to believe it, or didn't have time. Nina's mind was amazing at planning, distributing, evaluating, and forecasting everything related to her business, but in matters of subtle romantic science, the woman was illiterate. By some miracle, Nina had not made her husband a co-owner of the chain, charmed by his charisma. She glanced at the clock. It was just past 11. There was a stir in the hallway. "You're late tonight, too." Nina came out into the corridor, greeting her husband. "Yes," George nodded curtly, taking off his jacket. "There were problems with the new uniforms for the waiters. Took a long time to sort out." "Oh, that seamstress," Nina sighed. "Always letting us down." "Don't I know it?" George pecked her briefly on the cheek and went into the room to change. "Did you have dinner? I brought something from the mini banquet for Helen's Jubilee." 10 minutes later, they sat down at the large table in the luxurious kitchen. Nina couldn't remember the last time she'd cooked anything substantial there herself. Usually they had something quick for breakfast like coffee and waffles or scrambled eggs, ate lunch at work, and ordered dinner for delivery. There were too many things to fit a couple of hours of cooking into. Although Nina loved the culinary craft and had once taught the head chef of her first restaurant how to properly braise meat and how to turn any tomatoes into Baku ones. A discerning observer would immediately notice how Georgie's peacock tail wilted next to Nina, how he suppressed everything that was so flamboyant with his numerous mistresses. His gaze became gray, his movements quick but constrained, his smile politely strained. At first, Georgie tried to be expressive around his wife, but quickly realized that she couldn't give him what other girls did. He chose a different tactic: appear at home rarely, give token gifts once a month, be polite, and never argue. "Maybe we could watch an episode of that series," Nina suggested. "Nina, I'd love to, but I'm dead on my feet. My eyes are already closing. It's a miracle I even drove home." Georgie excused himself, simultaneously giving a dramatic yawn and rubbing his eyelids. The woman sighed. She knew they had both been on their feet all day, but she hoped for a miracle. After all, a woman's soul unconsciously craved romance, to snuggle up next to her beloved husband, pull up the blanket, and fall asleep watching a favorite movie. George rinsed his plate and went to shower. By the time Nina reached the bedroom, he was already asleep. The woman lay down beside him and hugged her husband. The pillow quickly carried her off to sleep as well. "Mr. George, someone is asking for you in the hall. A guest." The waitress Daisy peeked into the small office where Georgie handled all the restaurant's paperwork. "Something wrong?" The man lifted his head from his laptop. "No, nothing. She said she's a friend of yours." Daisy was shy for some reason. Very gently and subtly, but Georgie noticed. He always noticed how women trembled if he paid them attention, especially young provincial girls. Georgie subconsciously evaluated all female employees who came for interviews, and again subconsciously only hired those he found attractive. Georgie liked Daisy. Her work was pleasant to observe. "I'll be right down," the restaurant's executive director replied after a pause. Georgie adjusted his jacket and went into the hall. At a table for two by the window, Diana was seated in a chair with the grace of a panther. She smiled radiantly at him and stood up in greeting. The man was pleasantly surprised and sat down opposite her. "How are you?" Diana sipped her coffee with an innocent smile. "What are you doing here?" "I missed you," the girl replied, batting her eyelashes even more innocently. "It was easy to tell from the photos on your account exactly which restaurant you own. So, here I am." Georgie was restrained in his admiration and completely unrestrained in examining his mistress. Diana definitely knew how to present herself in the best light. Today she came in tight trousers, heels, and a bright fitted white blouse that emphasized her long dark hair. "Daisy, bring the guest a tiramisu on the house," Georgie instructed, walking past the waitress. "Mr. George, you're so generous," Daisy purred, both insinuatingly and simultaneously. Georgie unconsciously swelled with pride. Anyone who says only women like receiving compliments is lying. It works both ways. "I thought I should invite you somewhere myself today," the girl continued, scooping foam from her coffee with a spoon. "Go on," Georgie placed his palm on the table. "Tonight there's a production of Woe from Wit at the theater. I think a cultural evening wouldn't hurt after yesterday's fire." Diana smiled with the corner of her lips and raised an eyebrow expressively. "Only, I'm afraid I don't have a suitable outfit for going to such a place. You—" He had been thinking of calling his mistress in the evening, and here was such initiative, as if she had read his mind. And Georgie liked proactive, beautiful girls. This smoothed over the fact that she was asking him for a gift. The man smiled back at Diana mysteriously, took out his smartphone, made a couple of taps, and the sound of a bank notification for tickets rang out. "I've taken care of the tickets." He put the device back in his inner pocket. "And you take care of the outfit." Diana leaned across the table and pecked Georgie on the cheek. "And now I must excuse myself. Work awaits." George stood up from the chair. "Until this evening, and enjoy your leisure, as we say." He winked at Diana on his way out and left. She waited until her lover disappeared and quickly glanced at her smartphone screen, nodding to herself with satisfaction. Diana began to slowly savor the dessert that had been brought. At the same time, she held her phone to her ear. "Were you doubting me? These trousers work wonders." "Uh-huh. We're going to the theater tonight." "Of course," Chloe whispered. "Just a passing phase." Listening to guests' conversations was part of Daisy's routine workdays. A month passed. If at first Georgie allowed himself to see his mistress only during breaks and on his days off, soon she consumed all his space and burrowed deep, somewhere the man usually didn't let girls for entertainment into. Diana changed, adapting to his mood, but in any form, she was invariably beautiful. She said what he wanted to hear, admired him, and this further fueled his interest. Next to her, he was bright, charismatic, generous, gallant. Next to Nina, he was uniform, calm, blandly simple, with a businesslike expression on his face. They went to museums, exhibitions, various events together, even went to a country retreat once, and went shopping. "Looks like someone's fallen in love." Chloe sprawled on the sofa in Diana's tiny apartment on the outskirts of the city. "And that someone isn't me," her friend smirked. "Is it great with him?" "It would be great with anyone if they have money and looks. You, as usual, don't talk much about yourself. Don't invite me over." Chloe took a candy from a vase on the shelf. "I tell him what's necessary for now. Wedding planner. I like Mediterranean cuisine, European culture, and quality clothes. He doesn't need to know about the rented apartment and my past affairs." Diana swung her leg, sitting on a chair nearby. "The goal is to lure him away from his wife, and then we can talk about the rest." "See, Diana, you know how to charm men," Chloe stretched. My ideal type is in the flower shop over there. Believe me, maybe yours is waiting for you in line at the deli counter. Chloe chuckled. The girl remained silent. Well, come on, as usual, Chloe shrugged, chewing another candy. Let him take you on vacation or give you an expensive ring. Vacation is a bit early yet, Diana shook her head. A little later, when he's ripe. Divorce him, darling. If you drag your feet like this, he'll never ripen. Chloe got up from the sofa and put her hands on her hips. You need to state your position. Let's at least get those shoes, remember? That works. Diana looked at her friend slyly. Get ready. Let's go try on some shoes. That's the spirit. Chloe gave her a thumbs up and started looking for her purse. Nina was reviewing documents, sitting in the car next to her husband. They had been rushing around the city on business since morning. Traffic jams, calls, urgency. Nina knew how to handle all this calmly. Experience had taught her. But George didn't like such fuss and was nervous, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. And he also complained about the increase in purchase prices last month. Meat has skyrocketed, especially beef. What have they come up with? Raising prices in the middle of summer? Cows have plenty of food growing, Georgie grumbled. Vaccinations, grain, fuel, electricity, Nina listed calmly, without even looking up from the papers. One thing grows, another grows. For now, we're managing, and we'll keep the prices on dishes the same. Guests are used to our conditions. We'll raise them if there's another 20 or 30% markup on meat. But we'll earn less, Georgie objected. We'll observe for now, the woman replied. Georgie didn't give up. Seafood has also jumped. Everything's getting more expensive. Maybe we shouldn't buy a new freezer instead of keeping prices the same. The freezer is needed, Georgie, Nina countered. The old one broke twice, and the chef's preparations spoiled, costing a pretty penny. George was racking his brain trying to find another flaw and cover his expenses. In reality, meat and seafood were indeed getting more expensive, but not as much as he had described. Georgie understood that the beautiful mistress was costing him more and more, but he couldn't help himself. He wanted to be with her, to spoil her. George's phone pinged, notifying him of a messenger message. For some reason, Nina glanced at the device. A notification hung on the screen. Photo. George picked up the smartphone and quickly looked at the message, as fast as he could, and with as calm a face as he could manage. But Nina still noticed his eyebrow twitch, and a frame with high-heeled women's shoes flash in the screen's reflection on the glass. A nasty, unfamiliar, but very understandable feeling scraped inside her. With an effort of will, Nina suppressed it, but the cold snake of suspicion had already slithered further down her back, sending freezing needles through her. Something important? The woman asked her husband casually. Someone's sending jokes in the work chat, Georgie replied, watching the traffic light at the turn carefully. Nina nodded somewhat distractedly. Past it. They arrived at the restaurant to sort out work issues. Nina was bombarded with questions by the chefs. George immediately fled to the terrace to call someone. You're sending me photos at a bit of a bad time. He tried to make his voice sound confident, like he was playfully scolding. I thought your wife didn't poke her nose into your phone, Diana remarked softly on the other end of the line. Stung by her softness, George quickly composed himself. No, my space belongs to me, but there are moments when awkward situations happen. He leaned against the railing. You want to buy these shoes? They go so well with my new handbag, Diana purred. It would be a huge oversight not to get them. Besides, I'll look even brighter next to you in them. Georgie swallowed, already imagining the shoes on his mistress's slender legs. Beauty, female magic, was doing its work. All right, I'll expect you in them tomorrow. Without hanging up, Georgie went into his online bank and sent the necessary amount to Diana's card. Is that enough? Yes, of course, thank you, kitten, the girl purred into the phone. Pleasure cost money, and whose money paid for these whims was a secondary matter. Nina also came out onto the terrace, exhausted by the staff's questions. Her head was buzzing with the abundance of information, but outwardly the businesswoman remained calm. Georgie, I think we've been working so much lately, she approached her husband. Let's go out somewhere? Nina, I'd love to, but I already promised to go out of town with the guys. Nick bought a new car, wants to celebrate. Georgie shrugged nonchalantly. I know you don't like his company, so I didn't even invite you. Nina sighed. The excuse was perfect. She really didn't like Nick, her husband's friend. Well, if you're busy, she smiled stiffly, I hope you all have a good time. Georgie smiled broadly, put his arm around her waist, and together they went inside the restaurant. Dinners and breakfasts with her mother were a pleasant tradition for Nina. They began long ago, and over the years evolved from scrambled eggs and cocoa in the home kitchen to full-fledged trips to the most beautiful and interesting establishments. In essence, it was her mother who instilled in Nina a love for the catering industry and played a significant role in shaping who her daughter became. This time, Nina chose an Italian bistro with small cozy tables and checkered tablecloths for dinner. They often changed locations, but Nina never invited her mother to her own restaurants, considering it something of a bad omen. At the appointed time, her mother still hadn't arrived. Nina looked for a Mini Cooper, but didn't find it. Her mother, despite her age of 64, was a lively, energetic, and unique lady who had retained a youthful mischievousness. 10 minutes later, the waiter placed a teapot, cups, and cutlery in front of Nina. Her phone rang. Ninochka, I'm so sorry. I won't be able to make it. Her mother's voice was filled with apologetic notes. The neighbor's dog is sick. She's rushing it to the vet, and she asked me to sit with her granddaughter. You wouldn't leave a small child unattended, would you? I'm sorry again, dear. Well, if that's the case, there's nothing to be done, Nina sighed. Call Georgie. Let him fill in for me, her mother suggested from the other end. I'll call, the woman agreed curtly. I wish Tamara's Businka good health. Bye, Mom. Nina hung up. She wasn't exactly upset, but something close to it. It's like when you go to the store for one thing and end up buying something completely different or nothing at all. Originally, the evening was supposed to be spent with her husband, then with her mother, and in the end, she was sitting alone at a table, waiting. The waiter placed a plate of pizza on the table and wished the guest a pleasant meal. It was too late to leave or refuse. Nina decided to enjoy her own company, looking out the window. Who would have thought that, being a successful businesswoman and a married woman, one could feel so lonely? Good evening. I'm sorry to bother you, but you look very much like my childhood friend, a voice suddenly said nearby. Nina turned around and saw a vaguely familiar man speaking to her. And you look very much like my childhood friend, Nina laughed, recognizing the guest. He raised his eyebrows, but then smiled too. Nina, I haven't mistaken you, have I? May I sit down? Of course, Ivan. Wow, the man commented. How long has it been? 20 years? More, since they transferred you to serve in the Far East, Nina clarified. And now I'm a retired police officer. Ivan folded his hands on the table. And I decided to move closer to my historical homeland. How are you? So many years have passed. Amazing. And the conversations and questions, discussions and laughter began. Nina grew up in the same yard as Ivan. He was 2 years older than her. All their childhood they climbed into other people's yards together, built huts, baked potatoes in the ashes, and dreamed of growing up quickly. At school, Nina studied diligently, while Ivan got into scrapes, matured, and went into the army by the time she graduated. Their bond was strong, and you couldn't offend Nina, whether in first grade or 10th, otherwise Ivan would quickly rearrange the offenders' noses. I studied there in Vladivostok, went to work in the police, became an investigator. I've seen so much during that time. Now I've come here and I'm thinking about what a brave pensioner like me should do. Ivan finished his story cheerfully. It was written on your forehead that you'd wear a uniform. I'm not even surprised. Nina's mood noticeably improved. Meeting an old friend became that pleasant event, that spark of joy that she so needed. And in that case, you should either bake pies or make others bake them, Ivan replied in the same vein. Confess, you're in charge of someone, aren't you? Only 3 head chefs, 2 dozen waiters, and a modest restaurant. Nina stirred her tea with a spoon. Wow, Ivan was genuinely amazed. So we both became who we wanted to be? Looks like it, Nina agreed. What's wrong? Ivan noticed her distant gaze. Are you upset about something? Nina hesitated. She didn't want to complain about her baseless suspicions, but the feeling of the icy snake hadn't left her since that moment in the car. In the end, the woman, choosing her words carefully, described the subject of her concern to her friend. Ivan furrowed his brow. His face lit up with an idea. How about I keep an eye on your husband? I'm retired anyway. Plenty of time. I can also get to know the city properly, he suggested quite casually. That feels wrong somehow. Nina looked at the man with doubt. What if he realizes he's being followed? Ivan smiled broadly. Have you forgotten who I am? Surveillance and data collection were my professional duties for many years, and I must say, I performed them flawlessly. Ivan, you're growling, Nina said in a dry voice, and then burst into loud laughter, inadvertently amusing Ivan. Everything will be taken care of, comrade investigator. Can I just finish my dinner? She took the last piece of pizza from the plate. They talked for a long time, ordered a second pot of tea, and then dessert. The planned dinner turned out to be completely unplanned. By the end of summer, Diana had grown accustomed to a well-fed and comfortable life alongside George. Like many girls from the provinces, she came to the capital to study, but along the way realized she had chosen the wrong profession. By diploma, Diana was a bank employee, but in reality, she was involved in designing spaces for various celebrations, mostly weddings. This occupation brought the girl not only good dividends, but also useful connections. Diana quickly began to perceive relationships as a way to climb the ladder and get rich. She disdainfully threw fairy tales about love and paradise in a hut into her mental trash bin. Who needed this love when money had long decided everything in the city? And she saw confirmation of this at the weddings she designed, where girls married wealthy, established, and educated men. Exceptions, of course, occurred, but rarely. Diana believed that love would inevitably appear if your husband had a good income and respect. And his appearance played an almost secondary role here. But no matter how much her brain tried to convince her, the pull towards beauty crept up from the depths. Why did Diana latch onto George? She had hit the jackpot she had always secretly hoped for. She wasn't bothered by his wife or any other aggravating circumstances. We take everything we can, the girl said. Like-minded people for such a position were found very quickly. At one of the weddings, Diana met Chloe, one of the bridesmaids. The sharp-tongued, cheerful gossip appealed to Diana, and soon they started spending time together. Chloe had also come from the provinces and dreamed of settling down comfortably at someone else's expense. True, for now, her settling down was limited to working in a mid-range boutique and living with her aunt. Over time, the girl tidied herself up. But while Diana managed to quickly uproot her provincial nature, Chloe didn't succeed, and it occasionally showed in her manners and conversation. That's why only men who picked up on this stuck to her. The same provincial thugs or conquerors of the capital living in dorms. Chloe got angry. Diana laughed. She herself was luckier. As in any fishing, big fish take the bait less often than those who want to be like them. At 25, Diana already had experience with a government official, the owner of a bathhouse complex, a successful photographer, and a titled athlete. Only none of these relationships managed to reach the coveted trap on her finger. The official was also married. The businessman, for some reason, said he would marry the girl his parents approved of. But Diana wasn't discouraged. During the relationships, she managed to extract everything useful for the future. "It's time to hint to your Georgie about a joint vacation," Chloe yawned, declaring. "It's the velvet season now, the perfect time for trips to the sea." "Agreed," Diana nodded. "I was thinking about it myself." "What is there to think about? You're already covered in gifts." Chloe waved her hand dramatically towards her. "He gave you earrings, bought you shoes, ordered you a dress. You've been to all the decent places. What else are you waiting for? Throw Nina overboard." They were sitting on an elegant bench in the shade of sprawling trees on the embankment. It was stuffy. Diana fanned herself with a promotional booklet she had hastily grabbed from a promoter. Chloe wanted to give more and better advice. Lately, she had been avidly soaking up every word Diana said about her relationship with George, egging her on. "I'd demand the Maldives right away." "Do you think I should?" Diana suppressed a hint of doubt in her question. "Of course, friend. You've been seeing each other for 2 months now. With his capabilities, he should have figured it out himself by now. He drives a Lexus, but the thought of taking his lady on vacation hasn't even crossed his mind." Chloe tapped her forehead with a bent finger. "Educate him, why don't you?" "Maybe you're right," Diana drawled. "I'm tired of it here. I want a change of scenery, to warm my bones, get a tan without a solarium, and my designer swimsuit is just lying around unused." "A friend wouldn't give bad advice," Diana immediately agreed. She suggested to George that they go on vacation together. That's 7 to 10 days. They needed to come up with an excuse to present to his wife without causing pain. And they also needed to figure out where to scrape up the extra money for this vacation. It was one thing to be absent from home in the evening or give a mistress earrings, and another to sneak away for a week's vacation costing a couple of $100,000. Inside Georgie, 2 voices were fighting. One, adventurous, urged him to forget everything and give Diana the trip, and the second, meticulous, calculated the risks. "If you were divorced, you'd be taking girls all over the world. You wouldn't be under anyone's thumb," the first thought argued. "Yeah, divorced and left to eat nothing but crumbs. You should have told her long ago to at least put something in your name," the second voice sneered. Ideally, George wanted to chase 2 rabbits at once, live comfortably without trying too hard, and see a beautiful mistress while having a wife. But as the years passed, the role of the second began to weigh on Georgie. Although few people knew about it, their formal, dry relationship with his wife would have been obvious to anyone who wasn't blind. "You can't get divorced, Georgie," he muttered. "But no one else needs to know that besides you." Right. And the vacation adventure will have to be canceled and smoothed over with something." The man incidentally remembered that in September, the restaurant he was responsible for had a lot of planned events and banquets. Flying away at such a moment was maximally risky. Nina might suspect something. But Georgie also didn't want to argue with Diana. "We'll find a compromise." George looked at his reflection in the glass door and smirked. "Advantageous to its initiator, of course." Nina walked slowly through the restaurant hall, observing the fruit of her labor. The woman watched over it with a kind of tenderness and care, like a growing child who brought her certificates, A's, and medals from school. Nina was distracted from her pleasant contemplation by a phone call. "Hello, Nina. I have a full report on the work done." Ivan's voice was as casual as ever, but at the same time seemed to be trying to hide something. "Hello, Ivan." Nina's heart pounded loudly under her shirt. "Do you want to discuss this now?" "I think so," Ivan sighed somewhat tensely. "The information is curious, if that's the word. I'm parked nearby, on the corner of the street." "Okay, I'll be right there." Nina hung up. A nasty ache tightened in her chest, and a cold sweat broke out on her back. Why had she agreed to this venture at all, knowing what might come to light? Perhaps she didn't want to believe, or was afraid. It was funny given her position. Nina composed herself, clenched her hands into fists, exhaled, and pushed open the door to the street. She found Ivan in his car. He was thoughtfully examining something on his smartphone screen. When Nina got into the passenger seat, the man placed the device on his knee, screen down. "I won't keep you in suspense," Ivan began without ceremony. "I didn't observe George constantly, only for a month, but what I managed to see and record was enough." Nina swallowed. Ivan picked up his smartphone and handed it to her, having first turned on the screen. The photo that opened showed George sitting in the Bohemia Cafe with a young brunette, not in a friendly way at all, whispering something in her ear. "At the Bohemia Cafe?" Ivan prompted. Nina raised her hand, her icy finger tracing the screen. In the next frame, George was kissing the same girl in his car. The photo was taken through the windshield, but the professional hand of the former police officer had captured the shot so that there was no doubt about who was in it. There were several more photos after that, but they all eloquently spoke of the same thing. "So, a mistress," Nina stated in a harsh, unfamiliar voice. "Here it is. The truth I refuse to believe." "I'm sorry, Nina," Ivan brightened, putting a hand on her shoulder. "I tried to remain impartial in such moments, but I can't. You're not just another person filing a report." "Did you find out who she is?" "Of course." Ivan opened a folder with other photos on his smartphone and began scrolling through them for Nina. Diana Archer, 25 years old, from out of town, works as a wedding decorator, and also a professional capital city charmer of wealthy men. Nina carefully examined the photos of her rival. Slender, long-haired, blue eyes, stylish clothes, her complete opposite, and very young. "And how long has this been going on?" Nina asked, gathering her strength again. "According to my observations, a little over 2 months," Ivan drawled. "The motive here is more than clear. She needs a rich man. He needs—" Ivan hesitated, carefully searching for words. "You don't have to be delicate," Nina finished the sentence. "He needs someone younger and prettier. I've known somewhere deep down for a long time that a handsome man like Georgie couldn't be with me out of great love. I'm not a fool either, and I understand what initially attracted him. Only I didn't stop loving him because of it. And I should have." The woman's lips trembled, her eyes stung, and the pain was felt through all walls. Nina wiped away the tears that had welled up with the back of her hand, sniffing. Ivan involuntarily began to comfort her. "Nina, your husband is a poser and almost a gigolo. Don't even think of blaming yourself for anything. Besides, that's not all I found out." "What?" Nina stared at him in amazement. "How not all?" Just like that. Ivan somehow conspiratorially furrowed his brows. "It seems both lovers are playing their own game and think no one suspects anything. Basically, that's true. Only I burst out laughing when I realized what was going on." Nina looked at him in confusion. Instead of explaining, Ivan showed her something on his smartphone again. Nina carefully examined the picture. "I don't understand anything. Does he have 2 of them?" She wrinkled her brow. That's what I thought at first, too, Ivan nodded. It seems your husband wants to have everything everywhere at once. Ivan leaned towards her and began explaining something, counting on his fingers and drawing diagrams. And Nina laughed. Absurdly, foolishly, and completely inappropriately, but she laughed. What should I do in this situation? She asked the former investigator after all the discussions. Behave as usual, imperturbably, Ivan said. Let everything take its course, and I'll keep gathering information so you can do everything beautifully in the end. I hope, by the way, you're not thinking of forgiving him. Out of the question, Nina shook her head categorically. I've finally faced my fear, and now I don't intend to depend on it. This is my life. I'll send you all the photos, but just don't start a showdown prematurely. He's a jerk, I understand, but the matter needs to be seen through. You won't lose anything legally in a divorce, right? And he'll get almost nothing. So let's at least nail him for the sake of life's justice. He hugged Nina friendly and shook her gently. She composed herself, smiled, thanked her friend for his work, and got out of the car. Why aren't we flying? Diana pouted, wrinkling her nose. George sat opposite her in a soft armchair on the terrace of a trendy bistro. Boats and ships sailed by on the river nearby, and the wind blew cool air from the water's surface. Understand? I can't just drop everything and fly away in September. Georgie showed her the booking list for the restaurant hall for a month ahead. I can't now, but I promise we'll come back to this issue in the future. I was already set on the sea and sun, Diana continued to pout on principle, although she perfectly understood the real reason for her lover's refusal to travel. His wife, and only his wife, was preventing them from enjoying their vacation and each other. He could say anything about being busy, about plans, but for the first time, her lover's wife genuinely annoyed Diana. Gifts and time were no longer enough. She wanted to be the sole owner. Chloe constantly egged her on. With another darling, you can only dream of a comfortable and settled life, her friend said. You need to vacate your comfortable chair sooner. I brought you something to make up for this situation. George reached into his pocket. He placed a beautiful box on the table and nodded invitingly, suggesting she open it. Diana took the gift interestedly and found a ring with a large transparent stone in the box. Oh, is this an engagement ring? She examined the jewelry, its facets sparkling in the sunlight. Let's say it is. George contemplated the girl's joy and delight at the gift. He liked this feeling. He was energized by it. So, you're proposing to me? She put the ring on the ring finger of her right hand. Let's say, George smiled mysteriously, folding his hands over his stomach. But you're still married, Diana looked at him insinuatingly. I know, and I promise I will resolve this issue, George replied evasively and confidently at the same time. It seemed Diana was quite satisfied with this answer, as she kept admiring the stone in the ring and had already sent several photos to her friend in their chat. Of course, it would have been foolish not to boast about such a gift. George understood that he couldn't postpone the moment forever. A divorce from Nina would be disadvantageous to him in every sense, so sooner or later, the affair with Diana had to end, unless she eventually accepted the fact of his marriage. Diana pressed gently but often, and Georgie understood why. Many of their plans were ruined because of Nina. Anyone would start to get annoyed. That same evening, Diana was walking home from her workout, a sports bag slung over her shoulder. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Chloe was relentlessly praising the ring and marveling at George's impeccable taste. Did he tell you clearly that he'll divorce her? She asked. Almost, Diana confirmed. Almost, friend, doesn't count, Chloe remarked. It's either a clear answer or he's still leading you on. No dates, no plan of action. What is this? Are you suggesting you brainwash him with this question every time you meet? Chloe bent down to tie her shoelaces. I suggest you go to his gray little wife yourself and put a definitive end to their family story, Chloe stated crisply. Otherwise, it'll be like with that politician. Let your Georgie get angry, but you need to nip it in the bud. So, nip it? Diana hummed doubtfully. She had never done anything like this, but she had played out similar scenarios in her mind more than once. Yes, of course, nip it, Chloe confirmed heatedly. There's no other way out. Can we go together? No, he's my man. And who am I afraid of there, Chloe? Diana remembered George's plain legal wife. An old gray mouse? Spare me. A couple of phrases will be enough to make her cry. I still don't understand what keeps them together at all. Beautiful people should be with equally beautiful people. It's high time, friend, Chloe supported her. Go and demand what's yours from someone who clearly got him by mistake. Finishing these loud speeches with mutual laughter, the girls said goodbye at Diana's doorstep. She quickly darted into the shower, feeling combative and at the same time figuring out what to wear to visit her lover's wife to emphasize the difference between them even more. The doorbell rang after lunch, catching Nina by surprise. That day she had decided to work from home and had been sitting at her laptop in the kitchen since morning. Georgie had left to prepare for a large banquet and wasn't expected back yet. Her mother hadn't warned her about a visit, and she wasn't expecting a courier either. Nina put down her laptop and straightened up. Her back only ached when she put on the comfortable trousers and t-shirt from her home set. The woman took a sip of her now cold tea on the way and headed for the door. Peeking through the peephole, she saw standing there and persistently pressing the doorbell button, her husband's mistress. Nina even blinked, not believing her eyes. Her mouth went dry. The woman looked through the peephole again carefully. Yes, it was true. The girl from the photos Ivan had given her was standing on the landing. Nina took a deep breath, then exhaled, and reached for the handle. A wild, childish thought flashed through her mind. Maybe pretend no one's home? But the woman quickly dismissed it. The latch clicked with a metallic sound. The door opened. Their eyes met. In those couple of seconds, an experienced observer would have read contempt, disdain, and disgust in one pair of eyes, and vague interest, confusion, and strange restraint in the other. Hello, Nina. I won't beat around the bush and will say it straight away. Diana looked Nina over with a gaze full of contempt. Your husband and I love each other. That's a fact. And he doesn't love you. That's also a fact. So let him go nicely and give him a divorce. Nina overcame the initial wave of uncertainty and leaned her shoulder against the doorframe. She examined her rival. Diana had come fully dressed and made up, clearly intending to create a contrast, emphasizing her youth and vibrancy, as if Nina hadn't attended management courses. In her mind, the image of the mistress changed to that of a pompous green chorus girl who had come to apply for a job. The substitution worked. Hello, Diana. I'll agree with the second fact, as I've known it for some time. But I would strongly dispute the first one. My husband is only capable of loving himself, Nina said in a calm voice, looking Diana directly in the eyes. A flicker of surprise crossed Diana's eyes. The gray mouse wife was not the one who was supposed to immediately back down before her. And she even knew her name from somewhere. You're still not a match for him, and we both know that. Diana put her mask of confidence back on. He's young, handsome, successful. Next to him should be a woman just like that, who will make him happy. Give him a divorce. The moment to snap his nose, as Ivan had called it, had arrived. And who said I wouldn't give it? She said, looking intently at her rival, who was clearly thrown off balance. Take Georgie right now if you want. I'm even willing to let you into the apartment to pack his suitcases. Diana hesitated. Something clicked in her head. Just keep in mind that you won't get anything. The restaurant business is mine. This apartment was bought by me before the marriage. And even the car, which dear George used to impress you, also belongs to me. No, if the love is so great, I won't stand in your way. As they say, with your loved one, paradise is even in a hut. Nina shrugged. So be it. I'll let him stay on as a waiter. Diana was stunned. The well-rehearsed plan in her head collapsed like a house of cards. She backed away. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Nina took out her smartphone and showed Diana a photo. The picture showed a familiar car and two familiar people. Georgie was kissing Chloe near her house. Diana froze, stared at Nina with wild eyes, and began frantically pressing the elevator button. It was like a grasshopper trapped in a glass jar in the midday sun. All her confidence, mannerisms, and feline grace vanished in an instant as soon as Diana realized what an idiotic situation she was in. Finally, the elevator doors opened, and the girl disappeared inside. Nina watched her go with triumph. Now she didn't have to pretend anymore. She could cast away the beautiful and ungrateful toy. Let someone else have such happiness. As for her, Nina, she didn't need it for free. Only in the taxi did Diana fully realize how cleverly she had been tricked. One had deliberately blinded her with someone else's wealth. The other had talked her ear off and pushed her in the direction she herself wanted. Inside, she was seething. Even the taxi seemed too slow. She arrived at Chloe's house. She didn't know why she had come here, what she wanted to see or find out. Diana looked around. The painfully familiar car. The girl deliberately didn't ring the intercom and slipped into the building with one of the neighbors. She went up to the third floor and again, like an hour ago, began pressing the doorbell button. A couple of minutes later, the door opened. A disheveled Chloe stood on the threshold in a housecoat. Where is he? Diana pushed her aside and entered the apartment without ceremony, still wearing her shoes. Are you drunk? Who? Chloe twirled a finger at her temple. Instead of answering, Diana stared at her wildly and began to throw a tantrum. Did you decide to make a fool of me? Diana reached the old-fashioned tall wardrobe in the room and threw open the doors. That quiet, ticklish pause occurred. In the depths of the room, among the hangers of clothes, holding shoes and trousers, stood George, gazing at the two former friends with the look of a Chinese bobblehead. You traitor! Diana grabbed his ear and dragged him into the room. George yelped, awkwardly backed away, then stood up, shielding his face from the blows his humiliated mistress rained down on him. The situation was worthy of a joke, a bad joke. Diana glared furiously, first at her former suitor, and then at her former friend. How? Why did you do this to me? And why do you always get everything? Chloe flared up suddenly and brightly. All the perks, all the handsome guys, all the best options, and I'm just like a little dog, picking up the scraps in the form of stories about your gifts and affairs. Learn to share, friend. Diana was speechless. The one she had trusted with all her secrets, all her ideas and mysteries, turned out to be a vile rat. And now I understand everything. Diana, her cheeks burning, slowly clapped her hands. You deliberately persuaded me to raise my demands, hoping that Georgie would think twice and dump such an expensive girl. And I, like an idiot, believed you out of a sense of my own importance, and you sent me to his wife so I would make a fool of myself, and then you would come in and take over. Sarcastic, Chloe remarked. Maybe I'm not as beautiful, but I know how to be a real person, not just wear expensive shoes and beg for another ring. Listen to problems, give advice, and you're like a plastic doll, soulless and dolled up. Diana almost physically felt like she had been spat on. Without fully understanding what she was doing, she lunged at Chloe and slapped her resoundingly. The echo reverberated even in the corners of the room. Chloe's head buzzed like an empty pot. In the commotion of the argument, the rivals didn't even notice how the hero and instigator of the whole mess quietly slipped out of the apartment through the unlocked door. Without a word, they rushed to the window and only managed to see the rear bumper of the familiar Lexus. At home, George quickly tidied himself up and took a change of suit from the hanger in his study so that nothing would remind him of the shameful situation Georgie had found himself in today. The adventurism and danger that were invariably present in the situation he had created excited Georgie. Chloe wrote to Georgie on social media and suggested meeting. Diana had shown her his profile so often that it wasn't difficult to remember and find the man later. Chloe didn't ask to be taken to expensive restaurants, didn't ask for gifts. But she really knew how to listen. The more Diana asked for, the more Georgie liked Chloe. And at some point, he decided, why choose someone when you can be with everyone at once? One for money, the second for cozy evenings, the third for going out and maintaining his status. Why not live like that? Georgie was driving home hoping to rest from the situation he had gotten into. But today wasn't over yet. "Nina, I finished early," the man said loudly, slamming the front door. "Are you home?" "Home, Georgie, home," the woman replied. "I'm so tired." He came into the room, rubbing his forehead deliberately, tired of the agonizing choice of which of the two mistresses to prefer. Nina looked at her husband sitting in an armchair. George looked as if he had been doused with ice water. He tried to say something, but only managed something incoherent. "I know what you're tired of." Nina stood up and threw a stack of photos at his feet, where he was alternately with Diana and Chloe. Georgie stared blankly at the pictures scattered across the parquet floor. "Did you think you were the smartest?" Nina walked right up to her husband. "And the proverb about the well is apparently unfamiliar to you." Georgie just looked at her in silence, gradually realizing how he had messed up. "Out of the apartment by tomorrow, please." Nina turned away to the window. "And by the way, I've already found a new manager. If the position of waiter suits you, you can stay. Otherwise, you can go anywhere you please. I don't need a traitor husband, a cheater, and a gigolo." "Nina, let's talk," George began, but his wife interrupted him. "Get out now. Just leave the car keys here. Otherwise, I'll report it stolen." George realized he had played too much and outplayed himself. The box of abundance turned out to be a trap he shouldn't have trifled with. Devastated, humiliated by his own bad habits, Georgie trudged off to pack his things. Excuses were pointless. He thought of staying with one of his mistresses, but realized Diana wouldn't forgive him, and Chloe didn't really need him. Rather, she just wanted to get back at her friend this way. Georgie felt used and worthless. Nina heard him leave the living room. She felt she had won. But first and foremost, she admitted to herself what she had been afraid of and had diligently ignored. It was as if a dirty curtain had been pulled back in her consciousness, and clean, bright light poured in. The first snow fell on the city like a thin veil, covering sidewalks, roofs, trees, settling on fluffy coats and red noses, hiding in bushes, or landing on the tongues of curious children. Nina hurried to meet it. She hadn't seen Ivan since September. He had rushed off to his older sister's place beyond Murom while she was recovering from a broken leg. And now, this morning, her old friend had texted her and suggested meeting. Nina was refreshing her driving skills. Although she knew how to drive, she preferred taking taxis or relying on her ex-husband's driving. But now the woman was determined to steer her own life. Ivan chose some inconspicuous cafe for their meeting. A plump woman in an old bonnet was frying juicy chebureks behind the cashier in the open kitchen. "This place reminds me of my grandmother's kitchen." Nina looked around inside with interest when she and Ivan met and started talking. "That's why I chose it," the former investigator smiled, following her gaze. Just like childhood. It's all atmospheric. I want something simple, understandable, warm, comforting, and hot. A cheburek? Let's do it, Nina nodded in agreement. 10 minutes later, they were both devouring hot chebureks. They steamed, they dripped juice, but no one was bothered. Nina got her hands all greasy and couldn't remember the last time she felt so light and good with someone. Even the director of a restaurant chain has the right to indulge in a simple cup of tea and good old chebureks. The forests beyond Murom at my sister's place are a fairy tale. Perfect for cross-country skiing on a winter morning. Ivan wiped his hands with a napkin. I remember you loved to run like that as a child. There was more snow and more frequent frost when we were kids, Nina remarked. But you're right. I'd love to escape for a day from here into the forest. So you're already agreeing to go? Ivan asked soulfully. I think the restaurants can manage without my supervision for a couple of days, Nina stretched. And I need to practice driving not just in the city, but on the highway too. Skills are only developed through practice. We can go today. Why waste time, right? Ivan winked at her. Ivan, Nina chewed her lips, formulating her thought carefully. Will this be a friendly trip based on warm memories, or a romantic journey with hope for something more? Ivan smiled with the corners of his lips, wrinkles gathering at the outer corners of his eyes. That's for you to decide, the man replied. Let it be the second, she said after a pause. Ivan's hand covered her fingers on the table, tremblingly, confidently, and at that moment, Nina thought that another chapter was beginning in her life, but in a new book.